boy, what did I get myself into? Welcome back to Copenhagen Blue. I bought a car, and well, I think there might have been a mouse or two living in here. You be the judge. But in the 3 years that this thing was sitting, not running, it looks like there might have been some pesky pets that decided to make a hideaway in here. But it is a 2008 Kia Rio. I bought it for my son, or I should say we went halvesies on it. This is going to be his first car. He's 20 years old, decided he wants to embark on the joys of driving. So here we are. Now, I mean, is she the prettiest thing in the world? You know, for a $550 car, I'd say, yeah, she's not too bad for what it is. Decent interior, decent headliner, crank windows. I mean, hell, you can't ask for much more. But we do have a problem. It doesn't start. So we have to figure out what's going on there. And then I think I'd like to keep this budget at $1,000. If we can get this thing running and driving for $1,000 safely down the road, I'll consider it a win. Let's get started. Now when we get in, we do have 2 keys, and we got a little carabiner for free. But you put your key in the ignition, nothing happens. Now it's not as though it doesn't try. You'll notice the clock dims out, and it has good power, but just nothing happens. Now I've tried park, I've tried neutral, thinking maybe it was a neutral safety switch, but nothing. I'm pretty sure it's sending voltage to the starter, but that's the first place I was going to look. And I was thinking with all the mouse stuff that went on underneath the hood, we might have some mouse action down here, but when I look up in there, everything looks pretty good from where I'm sitting. Now, if you listen quietly, you can hear the starter relay clicking. So that means we're getting power from the ignition, hopefully all the way to the starter solenoid, or starter relay at least. Starter relay sending to the starter solenoid, and I think that's where it's stopping. So let's see if we can jump that terminal and we can make a full connection to the starter solenoid, and I think that might condemn our starter. Now we know we have a good battery, but what we need to do is get into the fuse box. So we're going to open up the fuse box here, and we're going to look at the back side of it, and we need to find the starter relay. And we need to flip this over. And it looks like starter relay is just below the blower motor relay on the right hand side over here. Right there is where the starter relay is. Now, before I go and start jumping relays, I am going to test this out. So I grabbed a pair of needle nose pliers. We're going to take the relay out. You can see the gold pins at the top are the signal from the car, and then the copper ones at the bottom. One is hot, and the other one is the one that receives the signal, or I should say receives the 12 volts once the signal's sent. So before we go and mess with the one for the starter, we're going to pull the one out for our AC condenser fan, and we're going to jump that one. So I'll take my needle nose pliers, and I'm going to put it up against the top and the bottom pin. So we have the top one here and the bottom. I don't know which one's hot, so we're just going to bridge that gap, which will then send the 12 volts to where it needs to go, and it should activate our fan. That our AC fan is in fact spinning, so the 12 volts is making it. Now we're going to do the same thing with our starter relay, and when we do it, we don't hear anything, not even a click. So that tells me either the wire going from the relay itself to the starter is disrupted, could be chewed, could be broken, or it means that the 12 volts is going to the starter and nothing's happening. Let's disassemble everything and see if we can't get to our starter. There's no other way to put it. This thing is filthy. I mean, you normally get sand and stuff like this at the bottom, but I don't even really want to touch this motor. It's just pretty grody. I'm assuming it's pretty much covered in mostly pee from squirrels or whatever. But when I wiggle the valve cover here, which is actually just a plate that goes over the spark plugs, it seems a little bit loose. So apparently whoever messed with this last time decided just to rip it off, and wow, that's a whole lot of seeds under there. Hopefully that doesn't impede anything, but thankfully it doesn't seem like whatever critter was living under here was interested in wires. They just wanted to use this engine bay as storage, which is okay with me. Oh, interesting, like sawdust. But let's get this vacuumed up. I didn't realize that I had everything on half speed, so you missed a whole bunch. But we've had some 12 millimeters to take out the battery tray, 10 millimeters to take out the airbox. Decent connectors, lift them up and the locking mechanism comes undone. So shout out to Hyundai, or Kia I should say. The bolts for the starter are actually from this side of the bell housing. They don't make you contort your hand in 15 different ways like every other auto manufacturer does to get the bolts out. They are easily accessible from the front. So we're going to take those out. We already took off our connector for the starter. I cleaned it with some contact or connector cleaner, and we did check for ohm readings between that wire and our fuse panel over here. But we have good continuity, so we know that we aren't having an issue with a broken wire there. I did find one broken wire for the speed sensor down there that we're going to have to repair, but that's not too big of a deal. But let's finish getting the starter out. We have our first 14 millimeter bolt out of the starter. Everywhere I look on this car, nuts. The squirrels just had a field day, or whatever the hell was living in here had a field day. Now there's plenty to do on this car. There's plenty to clean up. There's plenty to replace, I'm sure. But right now we just want to see if we can get the engine to crank over, since that's the main issue that we're experiencing right now, right? So we have our other 14 millimeter bolt out. Let's see if we can get our starter out of here. I already bought a starter from a scrapyard in Detroit, and those guys actually set me up pretty well, I think. I tested it, it works. 40 bucks, a lot better than the place right by my house that wanted 175 for an aftermarket or 81 for a factory one. And this is factory right off of Kia or a Hyundai, something. Anyway, but we already know we have a 13 millimeter bolt on the back, so we're going to use that knowledge to get the bolts off the back of the starter that we already have in. I don't know if it's a 12 or a 13. I think it might be a 12. Yeah, that's a 12. Okay, so there's a 12 and a 13 on the back of this thing. We just used the 13 to get the 12 off. Overkill? Maybe. But did it get the job done? Yes. Well, now I feel kind of stupid because I guess I really didn't even have to undo that 13 millimeter that I just undid. Okay, that looks great, sounds great. I didn't have to undo that 13 millimeter that was right there, so it looks like it's just the 12 millimeter is all we really need. But let's throw the new one on, see if it makes a difference. I don't know if it gave me the wiggle room I needed, but I ended a clip here. It looks like it allowed me just to get this harness up just enough to get it out of the passage this way. So it worked. I probably didn't have to unhook any of this stuff. So we could put all this stuff back in. But, you know, gives us a chance to inspect all the connectors there, you know. But we're gonna feed the starter back down. Here's our broken wire down here on the speed sensor, so I would anticipate that our speedometer's not gonna work. But we're gonna feed the new starter down in there, bolt it up, hook it up, and let's see what happens. All right, we have our 14 millimeter bolts back in. We hooked up our 12 volt that activates the starter solenoid. One thing while we're here, we're going to repair this broken wire that goes to the speed sensor. Since that's snapped, might as well do that while we have everything else apart. And then we need to put our air filter box back in, our battery tray, hook up our ECU, and yeah, we're going to see if this thing starts up. Just like I've said in the past, like my welding, my electrical, it's not great either. But I did use a little soldering connector here, and that's better than a broken wire. We'll put that sheathing back on and hook that back up. And then I'm going to put everything back together. Not sure what's going up with the oil on the intake here. This little puddle here, I don't know if it just leaked in from somewhere. It could have a bad PCV valve. I did find some oil in that intake tube, but we're going to clean this out before we put everything back together. Since I wasn't able to show you on the disassembly because of the speed being wrong on the camera, we have our airbox, which needs to be cleaned out a little bit. But for right now, I'm not too worried about it. We're going to see if this thing actually goes in. it is held in by some 10mm screws. Let's see. Yeah, these are 10mm. And there's 1, 2, and then there's one on the back, 3. So we'll do that. We're gonna hook our ECU back up, and then yeah, we're gonna put the battery in, turn the key, and see what happens. Air filter. You know what? It's good enough to breathe. Got our boot on there. Battery in here. Connect our positive first, as we're supposed to. Other way. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Good thing we didn't screw that up. That was back-asswards. Positive, negative, positive. Whew! That would have been like, so you had a bad day. Fire in the hole. I got the keys. After all that, really? Okay, we've had it on the charger for maybe 10 minutes and I'm impatient, so we're gonna try again. But hey, it's cranking. Got that going for us, which is nice. We've been charging for half an hour, 45 minutes. Let's see what happens. That probably isn't good. That's not good. Well, that's no bueno. Well, that is awesome. I can't even tell you how happy I am to know that the starter actually fixed it. I was kind of worried that it was going to be a mouse nightmare in here, but starter took care of it and it fired up. Do we have smoke over there from pulleys that are not moving apparently, or something that's seized up? Sure, but that's something, you know, to tackle in another video. We're on our way to seeing if the car's roadworthy, but for $550 we don't have a paperweight sitting in the driveway. We have something we can work with. But I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time.